Darryn Peterson has been billed as one of the elite prospects for the 2026 NBA draft, but we haven't really seen him this year. Well, the Kansas freshman just made his return from injury against Missouri, and immediately it made an impact. I'll break it all down for you next on Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings, your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. My name is Tyler Metcalf. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Now, typically, joining me as always is Tyler Rucker, but as you can see, I'm riding solo here. Rucker is taking a well-earned vacation with the family, so you're stuck with me. But don't worry, I got plenty of thoughts. We're going to have some fun. And today's episode, obviously, is about Darryn Peterson. Now, I'll get to best thing I saw over the weekend, some other thoughts that I have on Kansas as a whole. But we got to start out with the prize jewel, in my eyes, of this draft class, and that's Darryn Peterson. A lot of us have been talking about Peterson as this generational-ish type of prospect that you dream about building your franchise with, but he's obviously been hurt for most of the season. He had a couple big-time games against Louisville early in the scrimmage, had a couple flashes early in their regular season, but then was dealing with illness and hamstring issues and has missed the last couple of weeks. So if you're unfamiliar with the draft space or you haven't watched Peterson in high school and you just haven't gotten to see him yet, you're probably like, what is all the hype about? Like, yeah, highlights are cool, but like, how does the kid play? Well, he showed you today as he returned from injury in Kansas's 80-60 win over Missouri. Missouri's a solid team. Didn't look like it today, unfortunately. And Darryn Peterson's impact, I thought, was felt immediately. Now, Peterson only played 23 minutes, which was a little annoying because in the second half, he started right out the gate, subbed out right after the 16-minute TV timeout, came back in around the 12:45-ish, 12:30 mark, only played for like another minute and a half, and then sat the final like 11 minutes and 15 seconds. So he barely played in the second half. It looked like he was on the end of the bench getting some work done by the trainers, but it seems like it was all just preventative, precautionary stuff as the game was well in hand for Kansas already. And why force it? If this was a tournament game or, late in January and they're playing for conference title stuff, my guess is he would be out there. But they're already up 15-20, and it's like, why bother? We've seen what we need to see from him. We're not going to force it. So Peterson on the night ended up with 23 minutes, scored 17 points on 6 of 14 shooting, 3 of 9 from 3, 2 of 2 from the line, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, no turnovers, 1 steal, no blocks. A pretty rudimentary stat line for him, which is kind of saying something, because when we can look at a top prospect playing in conference play and be like 17 points, like, it's okay. And, you see the 3 rebounds, you see the 1 assist, and you're probably like, all right, well, he was just out there getting shots up. And that wasn't the case, especially on the offensive end. He was being put in motion, and I really enjoyed the way he played because he played simple. He wasn't out there forcing stuff. He wasn't out there trying to immediately show like, nah, like I know I've been gone, but I'm back. He was playing within himself. He was playing within the team concept and playing simple, which is all you can really ask for a guy coming back from hamstring injuries that also had setbacks and illnesses and all that kind of stuff. Because if he would have come out of the gate right away, shot chucking, it could have looked really ugly. And that's not who Peterson is as a player. And I really was glad that we didn't see that from him today. As they went through this game, Peterson really started out mostly in an off-ball role. They were running him off pin downs, DHOs, some second side pick and roll kind of stuff. But every time he looked to get downhill, Missouri was playing incredibly aggressive gap coverage. Like help defenders were collapsing on drives really aggressively, daring other guys to beat him. And they really couldn't for most of the game, at least while he was out there. Peterson just played simple. When that help defender would dive down into the driving lane, he would just make the simple read, kick it out to his teammate, who would then either make the extra pass, put up a wide open shot. So even though he only had 1 assist, I don't think that's anywhere near reflective of the type of passing reads that he was making and the defensive coverages that he was seeing. Because he also had a handful of hockey assists, handful of passes that led to guys attacking closeouts, getting to the rim, getting fouled. Because as a team, you take out as a team, Kansas shot just 46% from the floor, 43% from three, but that's also including Darren's numbers. And overall, you could just immediately feel his impact on the offense because all of the attention immediately went to him. As a spot-up shooter, the shot looked really good. He was catching in rhythm. He was letting it fly. The times where he kind of got in trouble and you could really see the rust on him, or when he was trying to take off-platform shots from outside. So what I mean by that is when he was running off screens and trying to hit stuff in movement, or trying to pull up off the bounce. A lot of those he typically left short. Those were the ones where it's like, okay, you still need to get your game legs under you. You're not quite in game shape yet, despite how much work is going on behind the scenes. Nothing can really replicate just playing in a game. And it was really clear. The area that it felt the most clear on the offensive end was his pull-up jumper. Now, the flip side of that is he had some absolutely gorgeous mid-range pull-ups where he'd attack off of Miami or Chicago action out of the corner, curl off into the middle of the floor, get his defender on his hip, attack really hard going downhill, slam on the brakes, stop on a dime, and then pivot back over his right shoulder. He had one that totally lost his defender. The defender didn't even bother jumping because his momentum had taken him so far the other way that by the time Peterson was releasing the shot, there's a good 5 feet of space that he had created by just simply driving to his right, stopping on a dime, turning over the other shoulder and fading away. Only about 12-ish feet away. Absolutely gorgeous shot creation by him. And it was the type of shot that you see all-stars make all the time and create all the time. Like if you just watch Anthony Edwards, he'll get that kind of shot 4, 5, 6 times a game. Devin Booker, same thing. Donovan Mitchell, same thing. Like these really fluid, dynamic, versatile scoring shooting guards. That is exactly who Darryn Peterson is, especially on the offensive end. From a playmaking standpoint, is okay. I know that I said that he was making smart, simple reads, but he was also missing some of the more advanced reads that we saw from him throughout high school, where his senior year in high school, he was constantly making really dynamic cross-court passes where he would lose his defender on the initial screen, get into the middle of the floor, collapse the defense, and then make a no-look pass to the opposite corner. There are a handful of opportunities for him to make those types of skip passes. I don't know if he just didn't see it, if he was just playing with blinders, that the game speed isn't quite there since he's missed the last couple weeks, or he didn't necessarily trust his teammate in that opposite corner to make the shot. Not in a nefarious way or anything like that, but there aren't a ton of awesome shooters on Kansas this year. So that's something in the coming weeks and games that I really hope we see Peterson continue to explore, continue to build off of, because as a senior in high school, he showed that he was an incredible playmaker. And there's some really, really fun playmaking and pick and roll creation stuff with him that has caused a lot of people to classify him as a point guard. He's not a point guard. He's a shooting guard. He's a 2 guard. He's an off-ball guard who can play make and create for others. If he's going to be your point guard, it's going to get a little stodgy. It's going to get a little clogged up. But as the second guy, and I'm talking about like at an NBA level, but if he's your secondary playmaker, your offense is going to be a lot of fun. But there are 2 ends of the floor. Going to get into Peterson's defense and some other thoughts on Kansas right after this. Nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do, locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto, all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. All right, let's talk about the defensive end, because for me, that was one of the bigger areas of question with Peterson coming into the year. Not that he was a bad defender by any means coming into the year, is just inconsistent. Is the typical stuff that we tend to see from high schoolers and young players in general, where they don't really know what they're doing out there, and they can tend to coast, especially the ones who their primary their elite skill it is on the offensive end, because when you have to run everything on offense, there's just less energy to divert to the defensive end. But in the past, when Darryn's wanted to lock in and really be a star and really be impactful on defense, he can. He has all the tools. He has the IQ. It's just the consistency of doing the little things on every single possession. And this game felt a lot like that. There were a handful of possessions where he slid his feet really well, was physical, but for most of the game, this is where I felt the rust the most, and the lack of chemistry with his teammates and the lack of just game experience, because he just kind of floated sometimes as an off-ball defender. There's one possession where a Missouri guard drove right and Peterson was on the opposite wing and just kind of floated to go, like he was trying to go pick his pocket from behind, but then never really committed to it, got caught in no man's land. The guard kicked back to Peterson's man and he never fully recovered. He was just kind of going through the motions. And that's the type of stuff where it's like, oh, okay, game's really fast for you right now on that end of the floor, and you're not entirely sure what your responsibilities are because you haven't been out here for the past 2 to 3 weeks with these guys. Totally understandable. Not a red flag by any means, but something that needs to see improvement throughout the year and going into the future. Because when Peterson does lock in on the defensive end, he can be a problem. His defense reminds me a lot, actually, of Anthony Edwards. Sorry to invoke that name again, but it's a lot of that. Well, when he wants to, he can single-handedly take over a possession and end a possession on the defensive end of the floor with his athleticism, with his fundamentals, with his fluidity. But there are also a lot of possessions that he's a little prone to taking off, and that's okay. It happens, especially with the young guys. It's just, can the frequency of those plays being taken off, can they lessen as his season progresses? Because if they do, now we're talking about a guy who has very few questions on the offensive end, and then very, very few questions on the defensive end as well. It just simply showing that type of consistency in execution, in roles, and communication, and all that kind of stuff is going to do wonders for his draft stock, and I just really cement him as the top guy in this class. It wasn't a great game from Peterson, but by no means was it a bad one. I don't think his numbers necessarily accurately reflect the type of impact that he had on the game, because just his sheer presence out there really shifted the defense's attention away from guys. It also more properly distributed the offensive creation responsibilities, whereas they just simply having a legitimate on-ball creator and a legitimate scoring threat out there made life so much easier for everyone else on this Kansas team. And one of my favorite things just watching Peterson is the way he just moves out there. It's like a pro. He glides, he changes speed and direction in short areas like no one else in college basketball can. It's a really special skill set, but having Peterson back is huge for Kansas. Hopefully he stays back. Hopefully there are no more setbacks, because everyone else on Kansas just looked more comfortable in their more appropriate roles. Which brings us to guys like Flory Badunga and Bryson Tiller and Trey White and Melvin Council. Let's start with Bryson Tiller because and defensively he was with Peterson back, his offensive role took yet another step back, which is good for him and good for the team. Not that he had major creation responsibilities before this game, but it just further simplified things, allowed him to be more of that off-ball cutter, and by inserting another floor spacer, another on-ball creator, it gave him a ton of opportunities to find those gaps around the dunker spot, in the middle of the lane, from the weak side, baseline cuts. He was really good at cutting off of other guys' scoring gravity and offensive gravity, and making himself available around the rim for offensive rebounds, for tip-ins, for backdoor lobs, all that kind of stuff. It was a really encouraging sign for him because he had been struggling a little bit. The shot wasn't really falling, and without Peterson out there, he's one step higher on the opposing team's defensive scouting report. But now he's, one spot lower, and that makes life a little bit easier because he's a little more of an afterthought, and he's going to be able to be put in position to find a lot more of these easy buckets around the rim. And then on the defensive end, he was phenomenal. I think really, really, really good. I think he ended up with 5 blocks, I believe. 5 blocks, 5 rebounds, 13 points on 4 or 5 shooting, 5 of 8 from the line. So those 5 blocks all came in really big spots, whether it's rotating from the weak side, but he also had a handful on ball where he slid his feet really well against drives, used his strength, used his physicality, and was really disruptive on that end. And now that he's having to do even less on offense, there's even more energy for him to divert to the defensive end where he can be an absolute menace. Similarly with Flory Badunga, we'd seen him drop a couple 20-plus point games, which was, always fun, but I'm not sure that it was survivable for that to be Kansas's main offensive scoring punch going forward into the season, into conference play, because Flory's grown a ton on the offensive end, but that's still not who he is. You can get away with a couple of those games early in the season. Doing it all year, not your best bet. But now as that freakish athlete, rim runner, we saw a couple empty corner pick and roll lobs that he threw down with ferocity. 11 rebounds on the night, 5 on the offensive glass. And when you have another on-ball shooter like that, like Darryn Peterson, who can get into the middle of the floor, attract second defenders, get that rim protector to take a step out of position because he's hesitant on, all right, do I drop all the way back to the rim for the rebound or to, take Flory out, or do I step up and not let this lethal 5-star freshman knock down a 12-footer? So those guys are going to get caught in no man's land more, which is going to free Flory up for dump offs. He's got really good hands for lobs, for offensive rebounds. Ended up with 10 points, 4 of 9 shooting, 5 offensive rebounds, 11 total, 2 blocks, 1 steal for him. But on offense, the more that him and Darryn can continue to play together, the easier his life is going to be on offense. And then defensively, he was yet again really good, especially as that weak side rim protector. His blocks were pretty emphatic, was really disruptive with his rotations. It was a really good sign for Flory. And then I'm not, from a draft standpoint, I'm not the biggest fan of guys like Trey White or Melvin Council, purely from an NBA draft standpoint. But again, Trey White ended up with 20 points on 5 of 9 shooting, 3 of 5 from 3, 7 of 8 from the line. And a lot of his looks came from driving kick situations where Peterson would collapse the defense and either directly attract White's guy that, he'd be the recipient of that pass, or he was the recipient of the hockey assist from Peterson, where it'd be Peterson drive, kick out, swing to White, and now he's attacking downhill against a rotation or just empty space or just letting a wide open 3 fly. So his numbers should improve. His efficiency should improve. And instead of having to create a lot of stuff for himself on ball, a lot of those situations should be manufactured for him because he's the defenders. If the defenders are going to go into those games being like, all right, well, if Trey White drops 20 on us tonight, then oh well. But as long as Darren's not dropping 30, we'll live with it. So he's got a really good chance to boost his draft stock, to really boost his numbers, his scoring efficiency, and decision making as that off ball scorer. It was incredible to have Darryn Peterson back. I really hope he stays here for the long haul. It's close to the best thing I saw all weekend, but not quite. I'll tell you what was right after this. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game. You're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can even bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So, if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit fanduel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, so Peterson, great to have him back. But the best thing I saw this weekend, it wasn't a specific player, it wasn't a specific game, it was an action. And it was a set that we're starting to see run a little more frequently. It's something that we've been praying for. Um, but it was Duke using the Cam Boozer, Isaiah Evans inverted pick and roll a little more frequently. We saw them. So what I mean by that is Cam Boozer is the ball handler and Isaiah Evans is the one setting the screen for him. We see elite shooters in the NBA do this all the time. Steph Curry is obviously famous for it with his off ball movement, his willingness to screen, because it just confuses the defense. It's a tricky cover, or it's a tricky action for defenders to adjust to, because the roles are reversed with the big and the wing in terms of who's playing drop, who's switching, who has to navigate a screen, and how they deal with it. So Boozer has been the almost heliocentric offensive creator for Duke this year on offense. Everything runs through him. He creates everything. But for a lot of the year, it's been, all right, feed it to him on the block or on the elbows and let him go to work. And he'll deal with the doubles as they come. And he almost always makes the right decision. But it's really clunky. It's not sexy basketball. It's not clean or easy. But now we saw the one of the most prominent examples of this was when Duke ran this inverted pick and roll against Florida. Isaiah Evans couldn't buy a bucket that entire game. They run this play. The defense blitzes Boozer. He kicks it back to Evans. Evans knocks down the game winner. Against Michigan State, they started running this a lot in the second half, especially, and it created a bunch of different looks. Boozer got a Euro step drive out of it. He drove and kicked to, I believe he had a kick back to Evans for a wide open three. He had a drive and kick back out to Caleb Foster once the defense collapsed on him. That set up the dagger that put the game out of reach for Duke over Michigan State in that game. So I'm just really enjoying watching this Duke offense adjust and evolve and mold around what's not working and what is working, and putting Boozer in better situations to create not only for himself, but also for everyone else on the team, because he's such a good decision maker that no matter what situation he's put in or what coverage the defense throws at him, he's probably going to make the right play. And now we're seeing him do it as that primary creator on the perimeter, in the post, in the mid-range, and it's been a really, really fun development that's only going to get more lethal and only going to get more effective as the season progresses. All right, so we'll leave it off there. Thank you all for hanging out with just me today. But the squad will be back throughout the week. Darryn Peterson's back playing basketball. It's a beautiful thing. You can follow me at Team Metcalf11. Find all our stuff at NoCeilingsNBA.com, No Ceilings YouTube, but where I will have a film school film breakdown on Darryn Peterson's return up on there in the next day or so. Make sure to go check it all out, subscribe, all that good stuff. But until we'll be back Thursday. Until then, thank you for making Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings your first listen every day.